Hello friends, my name is Akshay Agarwal. I am rank 43 in Civil Service Examination 2018. Today I am here to discuss with you the answer writing strategy for the mains examination. This is an initiative by IAS SCORE in which we post daily questions, and I have come here today as the examiner to tell you what I understand from this question and how one should approach to this question. I have evaluated around 20 to 25 copies for this question, and these copies are here. I will be sharing with you my views about these copies as to how different students approach different answers, their way of writing, their presentation, structure, language, and every aspect of answer writing. I must tell you that even I have learned a lot by evaluating these 25 copies, and all my learning I'll share with you in this video. Also, I'll give you my opinion on how one should approach this question and what things are expected. So the question is before you, which is here. I'll read out the question for you. The question is, the Prime Minister has recently highlighted the rising problem of plastic pollution in India. Examine the detrimental socio-economic effects of single-use plastic. Also enumerate the initiatives taken by India to address this problem and provide some further innovative solutions. First of all, friends, let me tell you that every question has its own demand, and given the size of this question, it is very clear that this question is to be written in around 250 words for 15 marks. For this, you are given a 3-page answer copy, and therefore a very good 250 words answer can be written. However, it is very important to understand different parts of the question and what is actually needed in this answer. So I'll highlight important things. The first line itself introduces you to the issue that the Prime Minister has recently highlighted the problem of plastic pollution. So this is a key word here, plastic pollution. This introduces you to the issue as to what exactly is asked. So now you know that the question is about plastic pollution in India. The second line says you examine. Examine the detrimental effect, socio-economic effects. This is also important. Of single-use plastics. This second line is the main part of this question, that you have to talk about the socio-economic effects, and that too detrimental effect of single-use plastic. So in the first sentence, you know that the question is about plastic pollution, and it is so serious that the Prime Minister himself has highlighted it. Now they narrow it down to single-use plastic, that the greater menace is caused by single-use plastic. So now this is the second level of the question. And the third part of the question is enumerate the initiatives taken by India. So initiative is a key word here, and you have to also provide some further solutions, and that too innovative solutions. So pay attention to the word innovative. I hope by this it is clear what is asked in the answer in the question. So I have created an answer frame, a standard answer frame for this question. A standard answer, a typical answer for this question should include these 4 parts. The first one is introduction, of course. So basically the introduction will be that you need to highlight the problem that is asked in the question by giving some facts, data, or any reading that you have read about this. Then the second part is the single-use plastic. As I have told you, plastic pollution is a broad theme, but in that the question asks you specially about single-use plastics. So single-use plastics and its socio-economic effects. That should be the second part of your question. Then the third part is, of course, the steps taken by the government to reduce the menace of single-use plastic pollution. And the last one should be the innovative solutions to this problem. Now let me discuss some of the answers that I have read for this question, and after that I'll tell you my view or my opinion on this question. Most of the students who have written answers for this question, so here are the answer copies, and I don't know the names of everyone, so I cannot take the names of everyone, but one of the names that I can see is P. Srija. So this student has written a good answer for this question, and then there is an answer copy of Mr. Rishabh and Mr. Amit Kumar and Mr. Sudhir Mishra. So there are these few answer copies that are with me, and I would like to highlight as to different approaches that these students have taken. So most of the students, as I can see from the 25 copies that I have evaluated, so they have started by saying or by talking about the Prime Minister's Independence Day speech. So in the introduction part, they have talked about PM's Independence Day speech, right? And which is also the first line of this question, that the Prime Minister has recently highlighted about this problem. So many students have started their answer with this. Some of them have also started with some facts and data, like plastic pollution, plastic generation in India is about 20,000 tons, and that we contribute 60% of the total pollution, etc., etc. So basically, introduction, either they have talked about Prime Minister's Independence Day speech. Secondly, they are talking about some facts as to how much plastic we are generating, how much waste we are generating. Thirdly, they are also talking about the definition of single-use plastics, right? So that is also how an answer can be started, and many students have done that. They have defined single-use plastics, given the examples of single-use plastics, and highlighted the problems of it. Then after that, socio-economic effects. So friends, when I was evaluating this paper, so I was a bit disappointed, because as I understand, socio-economic effects is a very specific thing that is asked in the question, and many people, many students have failed to address this very important thing, which is socio-economic. So what most of the students have highlighted here is that they have written about the environmental effects. Many students have written only about the environmental ill effects of plastic pollution or environmental effects of single-use plastics. But they fail to connect these environmental effects with the socio-economic effect. How these environmental hazards, how these environmental ill effects affect the socio-economic life of people. So one thing everyone must keep in mind, that we should focus on what is asked in the question. So the question does not ask you about the environmental effect of plastic pollution, but the socio-economic impact of it. Of course, you may argue that environmental effects have socio-economic consequences also, but you have to specifically link it to what you are writing. For example, you are writing that environmental effect of single-use plastic is that it causes marine pollution. It enters into the food chain, and many fishes, they eat this plastic, and somehow it enters into the food chain, it biomagnifies, and that's it. However, you should not stop here. In this, it is expected as to how it affects the socio-economic life of people. So there, of course, you can mention that it can affect fisheries sector, pisciculture, and many people who depend on the fisheries as their daily bread earning. So my point is, here you should focus on the socio-economic effects. So whether you write environmental effects, geographical effect, or any other effect, but try to link it to the socio-economic life of people. I'll also tell you in the later part of the video that what all socio-economic effect, what different angles we have to look at when we talk about the socio-economic effects. Then the third one is the steps taken by the government. Many students have highlighted good points for this particular part. So steps which are already taken by the government, most of you read about these steps in the newspapers, in the reports, or many materials that you follow to prepare for civil service examination. And I am happy that most of the people, most of the students, they are able to recall these steps and these initiatives by the government, and they have put it on the paper also. So steps taken by the government, this should ideally include laws or rules by the center, by the states or UTs, local bodies and civic society. The question asks you, enumerate the initiatives taken by India. So friends, India doesn't mean just the central government. It also means the state and union territories. It also means local bodies. It also means community participation, which is civic society. Like we as the citizens, as the people, what have we done? Is there any example in the country where we can say that civic society or people's participation has done something to beat the plastic pollution problem? So most of the students have addressed these points in their answer, and it's very heartening to see that you are reading good stuff and you have the content for this particular part of the question. Then the last winding up for this question is you have to also suggest some innovative solutions. So friends, one thing here I saw that many of the students who have written this answer, so innovative solutions, they have written it as way forward. Friends, I want to tell you that when we write a way forward, of course we provide some solutions to the issue that is asked in the question. And it is expected that in the concluding part of the answer, you write some way forward, you provide some solution. But when it is explicitly asked in the question itself that you have to provide some further innovative solutions, so please don't give the heading as way forward, because in that case it seems that you have missed an important part of the question and you have just wound up your answer by writing the way forward, although you have written points which are innovative solutions. So keep in mind, if it is specifically asked in the question that you have to provide some solution, then you in the heading you please write innovative solutions or solutions, further solutions. So this is one thing that I noticed. Secondly, in the innovative solution, I told you that innovative is a key word here, is an important word. So you have to keep this thing in mind that when you are suggesting some measures, you don't repeat the measures that are already taken by the government. So I have noticed in 3 or 4 papers that they have sort of repeated these efforts here in some other words, or they have written that we need to implement these steps properly. Friends, although this is right to to curb the problem of plastic pollution, but this does not meet the demand of the question. The demand of the question is you have to provide some innovative solutions. By innovative, that means that government or the local bodies or the state governments or the civic society has not been able to implement or use these solutions effectively till now, and therefore these are some new solutions, these are some new things that we need to adopt or that we need to implement. So I hope now it is very clear to you that that how this answer is approached by different people. And now let me go into a bit details of different parts of this question. First of all, let me tell you how people have structured the answer. Some people have made tables like this, and in this table they have mentioned about social effects, then 1 2 3 points, economic effects, this point. This is a very good approach to write an answer, because in this it is very clear for the examiner to read as to what different areas you have covered in your answer. At the same time, it is very easy to number your points. Like, I as the examiner know how many points you have mentioned, how many dimensions you have covered. So it is very it's a good way to approach to this answer, and some of the students have taken this approach. Some of them have also drawn flow diagrams or T diagrams like this, if you can see this. So this is also a very good way to write an answer, because in this the presentation become clear, and the examiner it makes life easy for the examiner to read your answer and to see whether you have covered different points or not. But there is one drawback about T diagram that I want to highlight. When you draw a T diagram like this, so in this paper is by Mr. Kumar Ujjwal. In this paper, it is very difficult, or in this kind of flow diagram or T diagram, it is very difficult to elaborate on your points. So for example, in this Kumar Ujjwal has written the problems caused by plastic pollution, and he has mentioned air pollution, then effects on human health, then water pollution, and some other effects on marine life, groundwater, etc. In this, the thing is, he is not able to elaborate on these points, and since I told you that this is an important part of the question, it is expected that you will elaborate on these points, because if you write water pollution, so you have to also link it to the socio-economic life, as to if it causes water pollution, if the rivers are polluted, canals are polluted, or groundwater is polluted. So what is the effect on the socio-economic life? So in this kind of T diagram, if you are drawing, please make sure that after that you elaborate a bit if it is an important part of the question. And I personally always feel that that we should write answers in points, like when you are enumerating the socio-economic effects, try to enumerate them, like for example point number 1, then 2, 3, like this. So give some numbers or give bullet points, so that it is easy for you also to know how many points you are writing, and also for the examiner. See, in this paper or in this particular examination, today I have evaluated around 25 copies, and as an examiner I can tell you that after a point of time, one really gets frustrated, if I may say, by evaluating so many copies. So one thing you have to do is that you have to make life of the examiner easier by writing your answer in a proper structured way, in writing in bullet points, right? Because that will be easy for the examiner to read, and then even though you have written a very good answer, but if it is not structured, then it may end up with lesser marks. Also, in few of the answer copies, I saw that people do not highlight the headings or the subheadings in the answer. For example, as I have told you that this is the answer frame, and this is an important part of the this is the important format in which answer should be written. So I think these things should be highlighted enough in your answer, like where you are starting with introduction, where is your socio-economic effects coming up, then where you are starting to write the steps taken by the government, and where are the innovative solutions. So there should be a clear segregation in your answer copy, and it should be very clearly visible in the first instance itself, that this much is the introduction, this much is the space occupied by socio-economic effects, and this much is the space occupied by government steps, and this much is for innovative solutions. So as I have told you, this is an important part: socio-economic effect, steps taken by the government, and innovative solution. Important point, you have 3 pages, so maybe half a page you write introduction, around 1/3 to half, and then another 0.8 to 1 page for socio-economic effects, another 0.5 pages for steps by government, another 0.5 for innovative solutions. So this makes your 2.5-3 page answers. This is how I feel you should divide your space properly and segregate your answers. But for that, it is very important that you understand as to what exactly is asked in this question. And so for that, I personally, what I would do is I would underline the important keywords, important parts of the question. So here I know that this is introducing the problem. Then the second thing, that is examine, this is first part that I need to address, right? Then this is the second part, initiatives 2, and this is the third one. So now you know that you have to divide answer broadly into 3 areas or into 3 parts, 1, 2, 3, and first one is just the introducing line, and for that also you can write 1/3 to half a page introduction. All right. So I think by now it is very clear as to what different approaches people take in writing their answers. So you can follow any way or any approach that suits you, but try to stick to the demand of the question. You can write either in table or in flow charts or in points or maybe also in paragraph if it is suitable for you, but you should directly attack the demand of the question. And demand of the question here is 3 parts that I am repeatedly saying. I am focusing on it because I want it to completely absorb into your mind and your personality, that whenever you are reading any question, first thing that should come to your mind is to segregate, is to dissect the question itself. That in this question, how many parts are there, what all things need to be written, and right. So that is how I believe answer writing practice needs to be done. So friends, now let me discuss with you some important points that should have been a part of this answer. So let's dissect the question. The Prime Minister has recently highlighted rising problem of plastic pollution in India. This introduces. So I told you that for introduction you can highlight the problem by stating facts or also by reiterating what is asked in the question. So in this you should have some content with you, right? You should know some facts and figures. These facts and figures you can get it from the economic survey that comes out every year, or maybe from the reports of ministries. Like for example, you can read report of Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Agriculture. In this you will get reports. In this you will get these facts and figures. So it is very important that you go through these government documents where you will get this fodder material for your answers. So for this introduction, you can either start by saying that today in India 45% of plastic is single-use plastic. See, because you know that the question has narrowed down to single-use plastics in the broad category of plastic. Basically it is saying that plastic itself is not a problem, but single-use plastic is the problem. So now you should know what is the gravity of the situation and how grave is the problem in India, and how much are we using single-use plastic. Out of the total plastic consumption, you should know that 45% of it is single-use plastic, and this single-use plastic is the major problem. And again then you can continue this by saying that our plastic consumption is increasing every day, and the plastic processing industry is estimated to grow up to 22 million tons by 2020, which is a huge amount. and nearly half of it, as I already told you, 45% is single use plastic. So nearly half of this 22 million tons will be single use plastic. So now you can understand, and then you can say whether we are equipped with the capacity to handle this much single use plastic or not. And so this introduces the problem very well, right? Or as some of the students have written, that we generate around 20,000 tons of plastic every day in our country, which was highlighted in the report of Environment Ministry. So you can start with any of these facts and figures, and basically you have to highlight or underscore the problem, that this is the problem, by giving facts and figures. Then comes the second part of this question, which is a very important part. They have asked you to examine the socio-economic, detrimental socio-economic effect of single-use plastic. So if in your introduction you have not written anything about single-use plastic, try to write one line here about single-use plastic, as to what do you understand by single-use plastic. The name itself tells you that these are the plastic items which cannot be reused or recycled. They are for single use. So once you use them, they have to be thrown away, and then they become a part of the pollution or part of the problem. Just write one line: single-use plastics are the plastic items which cannot be reused or which cannot be recycled. Hence, they contribute to plastic pollution. So this introduces itself, and then one line you can write: it has many detrimental socio-economic effects, which are listed below. So now you start writing socio-economic effects. In the socio-economic effects, as I have been telling again and again, socio-economic, this is an important word. So whatever problems you write, you have to link it to the socio-economic life of people. For example, if it comes to your mind, that the first thing that will come to your mind is littering or waste generation, right? That because of use of single-use plastic, we throw them away after using them, which leads to waste generation, littering, and the environment becomes unclean, and everything is untidy. But what effect it has on the socio-economic life? So first thing that you write here is that it generates waste. But what after that? After that you have to write that this waste gets accumulated, and therefore it leads to clogging of the sewage, and therefore urban floods, because of which life of people is disrupted, socio-economic life of people is disrupted. Second thing, it fills the landfills, and therefore because of that, what happens? Because of that, there is all sorts of harmful gases that emerge out. It is also breeding ground for mosquitoes and other pests and insects, which leads to vector-borne diseases. Again, impact on socio-economic life of people. Third, as I told you first, clogging of sewage, which leads to urban flood, disruption of socio-economic life. And when you talk about socio-economic life, you have to specifically think about different elements of society. So what are these different elements of society? So first one is your children, students, women, poor, right? So try to think about different elements of the society, and what is the impact of this single-use plastic pollution on these different elements of the society. As we all know, friends, that pollution affects poor people, women, children the most. Can you imagine an urban flood? Which people will it affect the most? Because most of the people, they live near either near the coast, or near the river side, or near the canals. They have all their slum situated there, and therefore whenever it floods, whenever it overrains, it affects the poor people the most. Secondly, it also affects school going students the most, because if they are in schools, then while returning home, it affects them the most. Kids, because they are more vulnerable to diseases, vector-borne diseases, and also women. Women, as we know, are more vulnerable when these kind of natural hazards or when these kind of disasters come our way. So therefore, if you address this socio-economic aspect of this question, I think you you are convincing the examiner that you know the meaning of socio-economic effects, and also it will tell you that you think holistically, you think about every element of the society. So try to include these important points. Then, as I told you, you will talk about garbage generation, environmental pollution. In environmental pollution, again you have to think about air pollution, water pollution, right? The soil pollution which is caused by this. It leads to reduction in fertility of soil, again loss of income to the farmers, etc. Then we also talk about how it affects food chain, right? So when you talk about food chain, it enters into the bodies of the fishes, then this fish is sold in the market, and then whoever eats this fish also gets affected by these harmful chemicals, and it may cause diseases like cancer, etc., pulmonary disorders. So there are so many different aspects. Ultimately you have to come down to the human element of it, as to how it affects human beings, because that is specifically asked in this question. Also you can write that when you talk about human health, you can write that it affects the genes also. So it has certain genetic disorders also, which is supported by the latest research. It also causes infertility, birth defects, impaired immunity, etc. So all kinds of problem that affects life of people, that can be highlighted in this part. Then you can also talk about some of the direct economic effects of plastic pollution. So what are the direct economic effects of plastic pollution? Can you think of any? Can you please mention it in the comment box as to what would be the direct economic impacts? Up till now, whatever we are talking about, of course we can say that this affects human beings, and human being forms the part of human capital, and therefore it affects economy. But you should also highlight what are the direct impacts on the economy. So 2 or 3 things that come to my mind, I'll tell you. Friends, first of all, whenever there is a menace of pollution, any kind of pollution, the life of that particular area where it is happening is affected, because of which business environment suffers. So one direct impact is business environment. Now this business environment suffering is a direct impact of plastic pollution. Like you can tell that because business environment suffers, there is less investments in the economy. Foreign direct investments are less encouraged, or they are discouraged. People don't want to invest because there is so much pollution, and so business environment suffers, and therefore this is a direct economic impact. Second thing is, it has a direct impact on the public exchequer, right? So if we are generating so much of plastic waste, if we are dumping them away on the roads, or we litter them away, so don't you think it has a very huge economic cost on the public exchequer, on the government? So the local bodies, or the central government, or state government, whichever government holds responsibility to clean the city or to keep the environment clean, it is a very huge burden on them, because now they have to spend so much money on cleaning the stuff, or on recycling, or whatever they can do with these pollutants. So therefore suffering of business environment, huge burden on public exchequer. This is another important direct economic effect of single-use plastic pollution. Then there is another direct impact, is that you can talk about the fisheries industry. So as I told you, marine pollution leads to effects on the fisheries, and as you know that fisheries contribute a major portion to the primary activities in our country, and millions of people depend on fisheries, especially in South India. And if the marine life is affected, it has a direct impact on the economic life of these people. So fishery industry suffer, which also leads to reduction in of our exports, right? Exports also suffer because of this, because as you know, in the World Trade Organization, there is one clause which is called as sanitary and phytosanitary measures. So basically countries can ban exports or imports from your country if they feel that this product is not suitable for consumption or is dangerous to human life. And there are many examples of that. And if the countries around the world are convinced, or if they know that in India this plastic pollution or the problem of biomagnification and harmful chemicals in the bodies of fishes or any other substance, then it may lead to reduction of our exports, which takes a heavy toll on the life of people who are dependent on it. So there are many direct economic impacts also. Ultimately it affects the social life of people, and then there are many indirect effects. So this is what is expected in this part of the question. Now let us talk about the third part, which is the steps taken by the government. So as I have already told you that many of the students who have attempted this answer and copies that I have evaluated, most of them have written very good answers to this particular part. They have been able to recall what are the steps taken by the government in order to reduce the plastic pollution or reduce the problem of plastic pollution. So few important things that I would like to say that this is extremely necessary in this is that you should mention about the plastic waste management rules here that were amended recently, and in that in that also you need to elaborate a bit as to you just can't write that government amended the plastic waste management rules and this is what we have done. No, because it doesn't talk anything about what exactly the government is doing. So what here you can talk about is you can write 2 or 3 important points in these amended rules. So first one is that the government has increased the minimum thickness that is allowed from 40 to 50 microns, and also another important point is that they have introduced the concept of extended producer responsibility, which means that the producers of this plastic are also held responsible for this pollution, and therefore their active participation is demanded in order to curb this problem. Then the second point that you can talk about is that so many state governments, like I think around more than 20 state governments and union territories administrations, they have banned use of single-use plastic. Recently I think it was done by government of Maharashtra, and Sikkim was the first state which banned use of single-use plastic, and therefore this is another point that you can mention, that the central government has firstly is that the central government has amended the plastic waste management rules, and the state governments have banned single-use plastics. If you know specific examples of any state government, of any initiative that the state government has taken, you can also mention that. Many people have mentioned about Kerala government initiative, which is called Suchitwa Mission. So you can mention some of the examples here. For example, Kerala Suchitwa Mission. This is what you can write when you are talking about the steps taken by the government. Another thing you can mention here is what are the initiatives taken by the civic society of the country. So for example, if you know about any NGO or any non-profit organization that works towards beating plastic pollution, so that also can be mentioned here as to what do they do and how do they encourage people, right? Then you can talk about Swachh Bharat mission, biofuels that the government is encouraging, and there is another one which is blue flag certification scheme of the government, in which the Ministry of Environment is developing Indian beaches to make it clean and free of pollution, including dumping of garbage and sewage. So these kind of steps are expected here. You should mention a few of this or as much as you can given the limited time. Then then another thing that I have told you is that local bodies. If you know about some municipal corporation or some local body in India which has taken a good initiative to beat plastic pollution, then we can talk about that as well here. So one example that I would like to give you is that the municipal corporation in Chhattisgarh, in a bid to spread awareness of curbing plastic use, feed the homeless and rag pickers, and empower poor women, is going to open a cafe soon. So one or two students have mentioned about this, and this is also a very good example that we can write. And one thing, friends, I have noticed that many of you have mentioned about the Beat Plastic Pollution theme of last year's World Environment Day, and in that India adopted or India pledged that India will get away with the use of single-use plastic by some say 2022. So that can also be written, but to my mind it is not really a step taken, it is just a pledge that we have done. And what is more important is that what concrete steps we have taken in this direction. So you should always talk about substance in your answer rather than rhetorics. So that is because that is what is rewarded, I feel, right? Adopting a pledge of beating plastic pollution by 2022, or declaring something from in the United Nations, or that these are our pledges, and but these are seen more as rhetorics rather than concrete steps. So try to put something that is very concrete, that is which has already been implemented and which are showing results. So so try to be very specific in these points, because remember, you are writing this exam to become bureaucrat, to become a civil servant, and civil servants are expected to be very specific and very substantial when they are talking. So substance should be more when you are talking rather than rhetoric. So this is the third part of your answer. And the next part that is asked, and the last one, is that you have to talk about the innovative solutions, further innovative solutions. So whatever you mentioned here, this is fine, you have already talked about it. Don't repeat them in the innovative solutions. In the innovative solutions, in these, even if you talk about 2 or 3 innovative solutions, then I think it should be fine. But please don't, in order to fill the space or in order to show that you have written 6 points, 7 points, do not repeat what you have already talked about, right? Because then it gives a very bad impression on the examiner that you lack content, and it gets mixed up with your 2-3 important points, and then you end up losing marks. So try to write some good points, very substantial ones. In this, friends, when you think about innovative solutions, so if you have read about it somewhere in the Yojana magazine or in some other report, I think it's fine. If you have read about innovative solution, you already know about it and you are writing it. But in case, consider that you don't know anything about it, you don't know any innovative solution. In that case, I'll give you a hint. So when you talk about innovative solutions, try to think about different ways in which you can curb this problem. So it is always that whenever we think about solutions, so you think of different dimensions. I'll write them down here. So I'll erase this. So whenever you're talking about solutions, right, in this, think about different ways in which we can provide solutions. So first one would be political. Second is your legislative. Third one is technological. Economic or financial. Right. So these are the 4 broad ways in which you can think. So think about some innovative solutions to this problem, political solution. So when we talk about political solution, it is not just politicians, it is not just MLAs or MPs or ministers, but when you talk about political solution, it also includes leaders. Basically, political solution means leadership. So leadership can be of MP, can be of MLA, can be of a minister, it can be of an IAS officer, it can be of an IPS officer, any civil servant, it can be of leader of a pressure group, of a community, of some social group, or it can be of students, right? So leadership can be, by political I mean leadership solutions. So maybe you can write that that district collector or maybe municipal commissioner, they can adopt these different ways, or maybe industrial leaders, they can invest in solutions which can curb plastic pollution. So you can talk about the leadership. So this is something that is new, which is not yet shown here. So maybe that can be one thing. Then second one is legislative solutions. So in this legislative solution, we have already talked about amendments to the plastic waste management rules. So you don't have to repeat those. Legislative, by legislative it means that laws, rules, etc. So maybe you can say that we can bring an All India Act in which we ban use of single-use plastic, or maybe something on the lines of increasing the taxes on plastic items, or giving subsidies to the industries of jute, or other things that can replace plastic items, right? So, or maybe giving subsidies to research and development, which are finding alternative solutions to single-use plastic items. So this can be thought of in the legislative solution part. Then there are some technological solutions also. If you can think about some technology that can be successfully used in curbing the pollution. For example, if you know about the pyrolytic converter. So in this pyrolytic converter, what it does is it basically converts this non-recyclable plastic into some form of fuel, and which can then be used. But the thing is, it is very costly. So at the moment, it is not financially feasible in order to adopt this. And then there is another technological solution. So technologies have been developed in which you can use this plastic for road construction, building of construction materials, or any other use. So you can think about different areas of technology in which this problem can be solved. And third one is and the last one, fourth one that I can think about is the economic or financial solutions. So friends, most of the times what happens is we lack resources to fight any problem. We don't have money to to implement so many things, to have so many projects. So we can also think about some innovative solutions to bring finances to actually fund these projects. So for example, in this we can talk about international cooperation, or building something on lines of International Solar Alliance. So as we know, India has taken a lead, an initiative to have this International Solar Alliance, in which we pool the funds in order to invest in technology which can convert light energy into electrical energy. Similarly, on these lines, we can think about, or we can take leadership, global leadership, which will pool funds to fight this plastic pollution. Because ultimately, we know that plastic pollution is a problem not local, right? So if plastic pollution happens in India, so it does not just affect India, it has effects on other countries as well. So we talk about the Great Pacific Garbage Gyre that is created in the Pacific Ocean, which has a huge huge magnitude. So therefore it is very necessary that we pool together funds as the members of this planet. And what are the innovative solutions for this? So there can be bonds. You can talk about international bonds, and then there can be something like carbon credits. So these things we can talk about here in the economic and financial solutions. And as I told you in the beginning itself, that this problem, although it talks about the plastic pollution, but very clearly from the second line you know that it wants you to address the problem of single use plastic, right? Because plastic is a good thing also in some other way. It is a very useful material in many things, and therefore your conclusion or your ending should be that plastic itself or a blanket ban on plastic is not desirable and is not advisable also, but we need to fight this single use plastic. And in order to fight single use plastic, it is very necessary that we have alternatives to it, because at the moment, as we know, single use plastic items are very cheap, right? And the alternatives to these, which we say gunny bags, jute bags or paper bags, these are very costly, and therefore if we ban plastic, if there is a blanket ban on plastic, then there is a different set of problems that come up. Those problems are again socio-economic problems, like so many people, they earn their livelihood because of this plastic industry, and the street vendors, the small shopkeepers, they use these plastic carry bags in order to pack their products, and therefore if we ban it, it may severely impact their businesses, and which again is not desirable as a country. So so the thing is, the way forward should be that we spend so much in the research and development that we have cheaper alternatives, feasible, which are financially feasible and which are easily adoptable, is needed. So that is one thing. Second thing is that you must mention in either in your innovative solution or in your concluding mark that behavioral change is very important aspect of any of solution to any problem, because unless there is participation of the citizens, unless there is community participation, or people actively know about the problem, I think there will be no effect. I mean, government officers or inspectors or ministers, MLAs, MPs, IAS officers, IPS officers alone cannot do anything. It is always people's participation. It should become a social movement. So that is how this answer should be concluded, that behavioral change, attitudinal change towards the problem of plastic pollution is very important. So here we have already seen success of Swachh Bharat mission. The basic aim of Swachh Bharat mission was, of course, to have sanitation and hygiene in the country, but most importantly it highlighted on behavioral change or behavioral patterns of the people. So similar efforts are needed for fighting this problem as well. Behavioral change, awareness, as I've told you, it can come from leadership. Any form of leadership is necessary, and that is how we can beat this problem. And the concluding line that I would like to tell you, that we are determined to solve this problem, right? And we have these solutions before us, but we need to think more about it. And before it gets too late, I think we should wake up and fight this problem to the best possible way. So these are this is broadly what one expects in this answer. I hope it is very clear to all of you. I mean, my goal and my aim for this video was not to discuss this particular problem, but to tell you, to highlight to you that how should we look at a question, how to dissect a question in different parts, and how to approach them, right? So read the question very carefully, spend 5 to 10 seconds in reading the questions, and if you see the length of the question itself, it is very long. So so what happens in the rush of the examination, we fail to pick up important points or important parts of the question, and therefore try to underline them, that this is an important part. Write these numbers like this is first part, second part, third part, This will help you address different parts of the question and also make your answer complete. So I hope after watching this video, all of you will be able to do it for any other question that comes your way. And this is how I think you should think about the problem and give its solution. So typically, let me tell you that as this was a question on plastic pollution, this forms part of the GS3 paper. But this, but any question in your general studies, I don't know about all the optionals, but about general studies, if we talk about any question will basically have an issue in it, that they will talk about some problem, some issue that India is facing, that the world is facing, right? And then they'll ask you to examine the effect of that issue on the socio-economic life or maybe administration, whatever is the topic with you. And then they will ask you what initiatives we have taken already in order to fight this. And then they'll ask you to provide further solutions to it, right? So this is a typical format of UPSC questions. If this format, if this frame fits into your mind well, I think you will start thinking about anything in this way. So whenever you are reading something in newspaper, so try to first of all identify what is the issue that it is talking about. Then the newspaper article will of course then will talk about what are the effects of that issue. Then it will give you some of the measures we have taken. It will critically examine the measures. Here the question was examine, right? So in this, it is again very important that you examine these measures. You just don't enumerate the measures, you examine as to, here examine the socio-economic effects. So here the effects were asked to examine, but in questions sometimes they can also ask you to critically examine the steps taken by the government, right? So for example here, if in place of also enumerate, so enumerate is the marker here, but this enumerate may have been replaced by critically examine also. So if this question asked you about critically examine the initiatives taken by India, so here one task increases, and here critically examine means you also have to comment on these issues, how much are on these steps taken by India, as to what level, to what extent they have been able to achieve the aim, what are the drawbacks, what are the shortcomings, and what further needs to be done, right? So the newspaper article that I was talking about will talk about these initiatives also. It will also criticize these issues, it will comment on it, and finally it will give you some solutions. So this is how a mindset should be developed when you are thinking about writing civil service examination, right? You first of all identify the issue, then you see what are the effects of it, what we have already done, and what further needs to be done. And when we talk about what further needs to be done, I have told you, think about these angles, right? These different approaches: political solutions, like leadership solutions, legislative solutions, technological solutions, financial solutions, right? International cooperation, that can be another dimension to it. So this is how I think you can approach any question, and I think that can make a very good answer if you do it in this manner. I hope it is very clear, and thank you for watching this video, and all the best for your preparation. Thank you.